So kind of walk us through what made you decide to start heading out of state and what that kind of looked like. When did you start doing that?
I think the first trip, the first real, I would, during college, I would take some forays into North Carolina. There was times during the season where North Carolina was open, but Virginia was closed. So I would jump the border there and go down into North Carolina, and most of the time get my teeth kicked in down there. I thought there was a lot of hunters on Virginia public land, but then you go down to North Carolina public land, and trying to get away from the crowd on North Carolina public land. If you can do that consistently, I think you're probably one of the better waterfowl hunters in the entire country if you can find ducks in a secluded spot on North Carolina public land. But I think I took the first trip I took, I want to say, was the first Flyways Collective. I went out to Kansas with some other YouTubers, and we kind of did a little group hunt for a few days. And after that, I knew I wanted to get back out there, but being in college, I had the college budget. I just wasn't able to really go and take any trips at the time. So when I came up here to Minnesota for that first year was really when I'd say I started to branch out into hunting other states more. And then I've just kind of that snowballed, I would say, the past few years to where now I'm predominantly hunting anywhere except Virginia.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that, but kind of walk us through when you decided to go to North Carolina. What did that look like? Were you doing a lot of e-scouting beforehand, or trying to talk to some people that you might have known down in the area?
Oh, definitely a little bit of both. I had some really good contacts down there, and when I started, the first couple trips I took down there, I would say the contacts who I had, they were doing most of the legwork, and I was kind of just jumping in the boat and piggybacking off of them. And then from there, I did do a lot of e-scouting. Among my friend circle, I would say most people would characterize me as like OCD when it comes to onyx. I mean, my onyx is crazy. The amount of pins I drop on places that I will probably never set eyes on, it can be a little bit overboard at times. So I was dropping a lot of pins, and when I was able to get down there, burning a lot of gas and just putting on a lot of miles. I mean, that's the only way to, I'd say, to get familiar with an area like that, somewhere that you haven't grown up, somewhere that's brand new to you. You just got to spend your time on the maps, and then spend your time on foot looking at places, seeing what the habitat looks like. And one thing I'd say the thing that brought me success more than anything in North Carolina was kind of like I said earlier, getting away from the crowd, just because the popular spots there are so popular that being able to find those little holes that other people had overlooked away from the crowds, I would say that's where we had our most success in terms of getting on birds.
Yeah, I'm starting to pick up a theme here. Back in Virginia, you were finding those spots that were kind of in between mud motors and walk-ins, and getting away from the crowds there, and now in North Carolina. So super interesting tactic, and something that our listeners should pay attention to if they're trying to go somewhere new or trying to change up their tactics.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say, I don't want to set a general rule of thumb, but as a general rule of thumb, spots that are over a mile walk, certainly over a mile and a half walk, that's going to keep most of the crowd away. That was always what I was looking for on onyx when I was e-scouting. If a spot was 2 miles from the parking area, I felt pretty confident that I would be the only one in there. But that's not always the case. And it stings a lot to walk in the dark 2 miles, and when you get to your spot, there's a headlamp already there. That one stings a lot. So it's not for the faint of heart, but when it does work out, it certainly seemed to bring some success.
Yeah, and that's a double-edged sword with onyx. I mean, I wouldn't trade it. I'd still take it even with the additional pressure that it's brought. But I've got to get better at using the different files for things, because my map, like you said, I open it up and I'm just like, what the heck am I doing here? I've got pins where you can barely even see the map in some places. But great tool for sure. I mean,
no doubt.
I don't know how I hunted without it.
Yeah, it kind of came around right as I was getting into waterfowl hunting, so it's always been a tool that I've used. But certainly, I think they've made a lot of really good improvements to it the last couple of years, and so it's become invaluable to me, I would say. Do you have a color coding system for it yet? that's been a huge thing for me,
Yeah,
is getting them all.
loosely.
Yeah, because that first season I was dropping pins all over the places and they were all the same color. And then that off season I was like, all right, I'm going to take a day. I got off work for a day. I'm going to go and color code all my stuff so I know what's public, what's private that I have permission on, what's private that I don't have permission on. And I know that's helped me out a lot with keeping everything sorted out.
Yeah, that's a really good system. I think I've got one color for places that I haven't walked. I've got another color for places that I've walked but not hunted, and just kind of loosely things like that. But I definitely got to get better at that's a good tip. I might have to take you up on that one.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to share what I got as my little system there.
Yeah, so kind of give us some tips or tricks, maybe, looking back when you first started going out of state, maybe some things that you picked up along the way that kind of changed your preparation or the gear that you take. Does it change depending on where you're hunting and what species, or you kind of just take the whole everything in the kitchen sink with you just to be prepared?
I'm certainly a take everything in the kitchen sink type of person. I was headed down to South Dakota this past year, and I'm pretty sure everybody who passed me on the highway was slow rolling me and eyeballing me because I had decoys piled up higher than the cab of my truck out of the back of that thing. But yeah, I'd say, that's a tough one. There's so many different things for different hunts that I've changed over the years, things that I bring, things that I don't bring anymore. I'd say the one thing that really comes to mind is goose decoys for duck hunting. I always used to think, hey, if I'm hunting ducks, I want to throw a duck spread. That's what I want to have out there. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that ducks love, I'm not sure if it's the comfort of having geese in the spread or if it's just that the goose decoys are bigger and more visible. But I found that, especially late season, having a majority goose spread with just a couple ducks sprinkled throughout can be super effective for decoying late season ducks. I think more than anything, it's probably just that comfort level is that the geese are typically a little more wary and they're a little bit bigger. Maybe they can pull up food off the bottom that the ducks can't get to. And so certainly late season and even early season, I like to throw a lot of goose decoys in my spread if I can.
Now, can you put a number on that? How many are you putting out, and kind of walk us through the setup, what that looks like?
Typically as many as I can bring in. I'd say anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen is probably about the size of a goose spread that I typically run. If we're talking floaters, if it's somewhere that I can drive into with a trailer, I'm not opposed to throwing a bunch of decoys. I have no problem putting out and picking up decoys. That's not something I've ever been afraid of. But yeah, for sure with floaters on the water, I'd say a dozen to 2 dozen. I've started using heyday decoys the last couple of years, and so they're super lightweight, and that's allowed me to go from, I'd say, probably about a dozen on average to now if I'm walking in or kayaking in, I'm able to drag in about 2 dozen.
So are you kind of bunching them up downwind, or are you kind of scattering them amongst the duck decoys, or how are you setting that up?
Typically, I'll keep them on the upwind side just in case of geese. And I'm not sure how much truth there is to that, but I know from the older waterfowl hunters I've hunted with, I've always heard that I'm keeping them on the downwind side. Sorry, I've always heard that geese, don't like to land over duck decoys, but ducks will land over goose decoys. And I certainly don't think ducks have any problem landing with or over goose decoys. So typically, I'll keep the geese on the downwind side and then kind of just trickle the ducks up on the upwind side just a little bit.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to what I've done too. I need to get better at taking more. I have a 4-slot floater that's pretty easy to carry in with the rest of my equipment, and sometimes I leave the other 6 behind. But I gotta get better, especially when I'm by myself, at just sucking it up and getting them in there somehow.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Texas rigs makes that a little bit easier. I used to be a big slotted bag, J hook weight type of guy, and I'd always bring in my slotted bags with me. And then I switched over to using Texas rigs. And then this past year, actually, my boss Corey, he's been getting it more into big game hunting the last couple of years, and see he has a couple frame packs now, and that kind of became my walk-in setup. Was I would have a frame pack and I'd clip off 2-3 dozen decoys of that frame pack, and that made walking in with decoys a whole heck of a lot easier.